Imagine a lonely cabin in a frozen Montana forest, where silence sits heavy like snowfall on an old roof. Inside lives Lucas Hale, a former deputy once strong and fearless, now confined to a wheelchair, after a tragic explosion, stole the use of his legs. He has given up on life, given up on hope, until one winter evening, a mysterious German shepherd emerges from the storm and lays its head on his frozen legs as if sent by fate. What follows is a journey of healing courage and friendship between two broken warriors who learn to stand again, not alone, but side by side. Before we begin, I would love to know where you are watching from. Leave a comment and tell me your city or country. And if stories of hope and resilience move your heart, please consider subscribing to the channel so we can continue bringing these meaningful stories to you. Winter in central Montana had a way of turning the world into a cathedral of silence. Snowfall did not simply cover the ground, it muted existence itself. Roads vanished beneath white mounds, roofs turned into pale silhouettes, and trees stood like frozen guardians against a slate-gray sky. The town of Silver Meadow, small, quiet, isolated, lay beneath winter's hush, as if holding its breath. In a small cedar wood cabin at the edge of town lived Deputy Lucas Hale, age 36, once tall and rugged with a soldier-straight posture, now thinned by months of inactivity. He had sandy brown hair that he no longer bothered to style, a face handsome in its structure but worn with exhaustion, and eyes that had once burned with alert purpose, yet now carried the dimming embers of a man who believed himself abandoned. His shoulders were broad, his arms still muscular, but from the waist down, his body was still and unmoving, two legs that no longer answered their master. Before his injury, Lucas had been a lawman revered in the county, confident, perceptive, known for catching the flicker of danger before others sensed it. He possessed a sharp instinct for tracking criminals and an uncanny accuracy with both pistol and rifle. But 14 months earlier, during a nighttime hostage rescue at a remote junkyard, an improvised explosive device had detonated beneath him. The blast left Lucas alive but shattered, his spinal cord damaged, his legs paralyzed. The surgeons had fought to stabilize him, and they succeeded, but not in restoring movement. From that moment, Lucas Hale, the man who once hunted storms, became a creature trapped inside his own stillness. His cabin reflected the man inside, sparse, neat, efficient, almost military. The walls held framed commendations that he no longer looked at, photographs of rescue teams he no longer called, and, tucked away in a drawer he never opened, the badge he once wore with honor. Now, Lucas spent his mornings in silence and his nights with insomnia. He hated pity, avoided social contact, and flinched at the smallest mention of his former life. Yet, there was one person who refused to abandon him, his mother, Eleanor Hale. Eleanor was 66, with silver-white hair tied in a bun that always seemed slightly loose, as if she had been too busy caring for someone else to fix it properly. She was of medium height, gently rounded in figure, with kind blue eyes that revealed both decades of resilience and an unshakable wellspring of compassion. She had grown up on a ranch and learned early to work through hardship, losing her husband to a farm accident when Lucas was 10, raising Lucas alone while working as a nurse, comforting others even as she navigated loss herself. That history made her gentle, never forceful. She understood that broken spirits cannot be mended by commands. She arrived every day, regardless of wind, snow, or her own aching knees, to cook for Lucas, clean, and quietly try to push sunlight back into his life. She never used the words, "you must," or "you need to." She employed tea, open windows, and warm presence as her tools of healing. One morning, the sky above Silver Meadow was a bruised shade of purple, and flakes fell lazily, too slow to be a blizzard, too constant to relent. Eleanor entered the cabin, carrying a thermos of peppermint tea. Lucas sat in his wheelchair near the window, staring at the snow as though it were a mirror to his own numbness. "Storm coming tonight," Eleanor said gently. "I know," Lucas replied, though he hadn't checked the weather. He simply felt the cold like a prophecy. Eleanor poured tea into a ceramic mug, blue with a painted elk Lucas had made in elementary school, and handed it to him. Lucas didn't look at her, but he took the cup. "You're quiet," she said. Lucas responded with a humorless chuckle. "I'm always quiet." She sat opposite him, folding her hands. No, there are different kinds of quiet. There's the quiet of rest, and the quiet of shutting the world out. Lucas didn't answer. It was too true. The silence in the cabin thickened until Eleanor finally spoke again, softer. You are still alive, Lucas. Out there. She nodded toward the winter woods. Something is waiting for you to find it. Lucas snorted. I don't have legs. I'm not finding anything. Eleanor didn't flinch at the bitterness. She simply rose, walked to the window, and pulled the curtains open wide. Light spilled in, the weak, pale glow of a winter sun, but light nonetheless. Lucas shielded his eyes. Mom? Just let the daylight in, she murmured. The truth was, Eleanor feared for her son. Not in a dramatic way. He was not self-destructive, but in that slow, internal way, where someone fades by degrees. She had witnessed such decline in former patients, veterans who survived explosions and firefights, but became prisoners of their own memories afterward. Trauma did not always roar. Sometimes it whispered, "You are less than you were," until the person believed it. Eleanor would not let that happen to her son. She spent that morning humming softly while she cooked oatmeal with honey. Lucas watched her move around the kitchen with familiarity and confidence. She always had a presence that anchored a room. People in town often said Eleanor could soothe someone simply by sitting next to them, like the world was steadier when she was near. Lucas ate in silence. He never thanked her aloud, but Eleanor didn't need the words. The fact that he ate was enough. Later, when the hour had passed and Eleanor prepared to leave for the afternoon, Lucas finally spoke. What if this is it? She turned. What do you mean? My life, like this? He tapped the side of his wheelchair. What if there's nothing left to do except wait out the years? Eleanor stepped forward, cupped his face in her palms, warm, gentle, and said quietly, Life has many doors, Lucas. Some close, some open. You haven't seen all of yours yet. Lucas looked away. I don't have anything left to find. Eleanor let go of his face, put on her coat, and before leaving whispered, almost to the window itself, Then something will find you. That evening, the town was nearly silent. Snowflakes landed against the windows like ghostly moths. Lucas left the lights off and sat in dimness, listening to the wind move around the cabin. He could hear the distant whine of it through the pines. He felt the weight of winter, not the season, but the metaphor of it, pressing close. Outside, animals detoured around the cabin. Deer, a fox or two, perhaps even a stray coyote. But something else moved in the distance, something breathing, living, navigating the snow with effort. Lucas didn't know it yet, but destiny had already begun to walk toward him. Tomorrow he would step, metaphorically, back into the world. But tonight he only watched snowfall, unaware that beyond the timberline, a creature with frost-coated fur and tired bones was sniffing its way through the storm, toward the man who thought he would never stand again. And so, the first chapter closes with Lucas Hale, broken, angry, half asleep to life, while across the winter wilderness something approaches, something that would change the fate of both man and beast. Dawn arrived not with sunlight, but with a thin milk-gray haze that made the world look half-formed. The storm had eased in the night, leaving a thick new layer of snow that swallowed footprints and invited silence. Lucas Hale woke to the sound of wind pressing gently against the cabin walls like a soft throat clearing. He sat in his wheelchair beside the window, observing the pale, colorless world beyond. The sky and the earth were the same hue, one endless sheet of winter. Eleanor arrived shortly before noon, carrying a basket with fresh bread wrapped inside a towel to preserve warmth. Her cheeks were flushed from the cold, and a faint dusting of snow clung to her hair like frost-kissed lace. She greeted Lucas with a calm smile, as she always did, but today her voice carried a tone of subtle insistence. Lucas, we are going outside today. He raised an eyebrow. Are we? Yes, she said, already taking hold of the wheelchair handles. You've stared at the winter long enough. Today you breathe it. Lucas sighed but did not resist. That, in itself, was progress. The wheelchair rolled over the threshold and onto the cleared wooden ramp. The cold hit Lucas like a wall, sharp, clean, thrilling, in a way that hurt a little. The air smelled of pine resin and untouched snow. Their destination was the Glacier Ridge Woods, a stretch of forest that bordered town and served as both natural barrier and treasured sanctuary. Eleanor pushed him slowly along a narrow path, while snowflakes drifted lazily in the air. Lucas had been here countless times before the accident, tracking fugitives, hiking, jogging, living. Now he experienced the forest as a passenger, not an explorer. The pines stood majestic, their branches heavy with snow. Underfoot, the world was white and soundless. Lucas inhaled deeply. The cold stung his nostrils in a strangely invigorating way. Eleanor smiled quietly behind him, though he could not see it. She hoped that perhaps the forest would stir something in him. As they reached a clearing, Eleanor stopped. "Listen," she murmured. For a moment, Lucas wondered what she wanted him to hear. Wind, birds. But then, a sound pierced the quiet. A whimper. It was faint, muffled, almost swallowed by the winter. Lucas turned his head sharply. "Did you hear that?" Eleanor nodded. "From over there." She pointed to a cluster of bare bushes half buried beneath the snow. Lucas reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small flashlight. The beam cut through the fog and snow crystals like a sword of pale gold. He scanned, searching. The whimper came again, soft, pained, pleading. And then the flashlight caught movement. Emerging from behind a snow-covered stump was a German shepherd, though unlike the typical tan and black coloration, this one was strikingly pale gray and white, as though the winter itself had sculpted him from frost. Ice clung to his fur in tiny crystals. He moved slowly, one paw at a time, as though any sudden motion might shatter him. Lucas froze, not in fear, but in recognition of something deeper, something instinctive. This creature had known humans before, not as a stray knows them, cautiously, resentfully, but as a partner does. This was a dog with history embedded in its eyes. The dog approached them, not rushing, not barking. He lowered his head respectfully, tail low, but not tucked. When he reached Lucas's feet, he paused, then gently rested his head atop Lucas's immobile legs. Lucas felt his breath catch. He had become accustomed to people carefully avoiding any acknowledgement of his legs. Yet, here was a being who simply acknowledged them. Slowly, Lucas reached down and stroked the dog's head. The fur was thick but cold, stiff near the tips from frozen moisture. Eleanor spoke softly. "Poor thing, he's freezing." Lucas didn't answer. He was too busy looking the dog in the eyes. Those eyes, icy blue with a rim of amber, spoke of experience, intelligence, and unwavering loyalty. They were the eyes of an animal who had once been trusted with responsibility. Lucas had seen such eyes before, on K9 partners. He whispered, "Where did you come from, boy?" The dog didn't respond, of course, but his gaze deepened, as though he recognized something familiar in Lucas too. Perhaps the quiet grief of someone who had once had a mission and lost it. Eleanor knelt beside them, rubbing the dog's neck to circulate warmth. He must have been out here all night, maybe longer. Lucas inspected the dog for signs of injury. No blood, no limping, but exhaustion radiated from him. The dog trembled not from fear, but from cold. Lucas made a decision, not consciously but instinctively. "We're bringing him in." Eleanor nodded immediately. "Of course." Lucas opened his coat, and the dog willingly pressed against him, absorbing what warmth he could. His weight settled gently onto Lucas's legs, not painful, just present. A grounding weight. As they turned to head back, Lucas felt a strange sensation, like something inside him was thawing. Back in the cabin's warmth, the transformation was immediate. The dog began to relax from stiff, survival mode posture to something more trusting. Eleanor dried him with towels, while Lucas examined his condition more thoroughly. "Male," Lucas murmured, "about 4 or 5 years old, excellent physical structure, strong build. Look at these paws. Not a pet's paws. These are working paws." He noted the symmetrical musculature, the clipped dew claws, the straight tail carriage. Eleanor listened with fascination. It had been months since Lucas spoke with this kind of professional interest. "You sound like your old self again," she said gently. Lucas paused, realizing she was right. Maybe a little. Once dried, the dog permitted Lucas to inspect the collar around his neck, a durable tactical-style band with no name, tag, but inside, sewn into the lining, was a faded inscription, K9 Snow Raptor. 17. Lucas felt a shock ripple through him. This dog belonged to a unit, he murmured. Suddenly his instincts sharpened, like dormant muscles snapping awake. He looked into those eyes again. You were trained, you served. The dog, later to be named Blizzard, though that had not yet happened, responded by raising his chin and sitting upright in perfect heel position beside Lucas's wheelchair. Eleanor gasped softly. My goodness, he's saluting you? Lucas's lips twitched with the ghost of a smile. No, he's waiting for his next command. He swallowed. He whispered, Sit. The dog obeyed instantly. A pause. Stay. The dog remained utterly motionless. Lucas felt something electric travel through him, something like a heartbeat awakening. Eleanor watched with hopeful eyes. Lucas, I think he was meant to find you. Lucas didn't respond aloud. In his heart, a tremor began, the first sign of a crack in the ice of his despair. As the afternoon faded into early dusk and the sun cast orange reflections off the snowy field, the dog lay beside Lucas's wheelchair, head resting once again on his lifeless legs. Lucas stroked him absent-mindedly and murmured, You chose the one person in this town who can't run with you, boy. The dog only pressed closer, breathing softly, almost reassuringly. Outside, the land was still winter. Inside, the thaw had begun. The morning sun in Silver Meadow didn't shine. It glimmered, faint and cold, like light reflected off polished bone. The storm had passed, leaving the world unnaturally still. Lucas awoke to the sound of gentle breathing, not his own. The pale gray and white German shepherd lay curled beside the wheelchair, chest rising and falling in steady rhythm, now warm and thawed. For the first time in months, Lucas didn't wake up with the heavy, crushing sense of being alone. It startled him. Eleanor arrived earlier than usual, bringing a knitted blanket she'd washed overnight and a thermos of chicken broth for the dog. Her instinct was motherly and immediate. She knelt, offering a soft whisper. Hello again, traveler. The dog nuzzled her hand, tail giving a small, respectful wave, never frantic or sloppy, but measured. Everything he did was controlled, observant, trained. Lucas observed him while sipping coffee. The dog had regained alertness. His ears tracked every distant sound, eyes sharp as winter glass. He wasn't timid. He was waiting for instruction. Lucas found himself speaking aloud without fully intending to. We need to know who he is, or who he was. Eleanor nodded. We're taking him to Dr. Holt today. Dr. Miriam Holt was the town's only veterinarian. She was in her early 50s, tall, with long limbs and a posture that seemed permanently slightly bent forward, as if perpetually leaning toward animals to listen. Her hair was straight, black streaked with silver, and she wore square-framed glasses that gave her a perceptive, bookish look. She didn't smile often, but when she did, it was subtle and sincere, a quick warm lift of the eyes more than the mouth. She had once dreamed of becoming a surgeon, but shifted to veterinary work after losing a patient, a teenage boy, in the ER many years ago. The trauma turned her toward healing those who could not speak. Animals never asked her why she couldn't save someone. They simply received care. Lucas and Eleanor loaded the dog into the county's wheelchair van, which had a fold-out ramp. The dog rode calmly, sitting beside Lucas like a guard. Every so often, the dog would press his flank softly against Lucas's leg, as though grounding him in the present. At the clinic, the bell above the door chimed softly as they entered. The space smelled of antiseptic and cedar shavings. Framed photos of local pets lined the walls. Cats curled like queens, golden retrievers smiling wide, horses leaning over fences. There were awards too. Veterinarian of the Year 2018, Community Caregiver Award 2022. Recognition in Dr. Holt never mentioned. She approached them briskly. Lucas, Eleanor, and guest. She crouched in front of the dog, her eyes assessing like a forensic scientist. May I? She murmured, offering her hand. The dog sniffed, judged her acceptable, then allowed her to examine him. She checked teeth, strong, paws, thickened from training, heartbeat, robust. Then came the microchip scanner. She guided the small device along the dog's neck. A beep. Data appeared on a small LCD screen. Her voice tightened. "Oh." Lucas leaned forward. "What?" She turned the scanner so they could read. K9 Snow Raptor, 17 North Dakota. Search and rescue unit. Status, missing. 8 months. For a moment, the room froze. Eleanor's hands pressed to her chest. Lucas felt something stir, like a match striking inside him. Dr. Holt continued reading. His designated handler was Officer Shane Ward, deceased in the spring avalanche last year. The dog went missing shortly after. Lucas saw it then, the sorrow in the dog's eyes. Not generic sadness, personal loss. Dr. Holt glanced at Blizzard, though the name had yet to become official. He wasn't just a rescue dog. He was attached to a partner. Losing a handler can break a K9, just like losing a comrade can break a soldier. Lucas closed his eyes tightly. He knew this pain. "We've been similar," he whispered. The clinic door opened, a gust of snow sweeping in, and Sheriff Arlen Boone stepped inside. He was in his late 50s, tall with a wide chest, gray beard trimmed short, and eyes that had seen decades of law and grief. Boone was pragmatic, respected, a man who seldom raised his voice. His presence lent steadiness to a room. "Lucas," he said with a nod. "Dr. Holt called me." Lucas muttered, "That was fast." Boone walked closer to the dog. The shepherd's ears perked in recognition of authority, but relaxed after assessing no threat. Boone read the data. Missing K9, assigned to a deceased handler, 8 months on his own. He exhaled. Poor bastard. Lucas raised his chin. What happens now? Boone placed a hand on Lucas's shoulder, heavy and firm. The North Dakota unit already closed the file. They've marked this dog as formally decommissioned, meaning, he paused, he can be adopted. Lucas blinked. By who? Boone smiled faintly. By the man he walked to through a snowstorm. Lucas's instinctive response, I can't take care of a K9. I can't even... He gestured to his legs with bitterness. But Blizzard, Snow Raptor, chose that exact moment to step forward, sit directly beside Lucas, and rest his head on Lucas's immobile thigh. Boone's voice was gentle. He already made the decision for you. Lucas's eyes burned, but he didn't cry, at least not visibly. Dr. Holt printed papers. Boone signed authorization, then turned to Lucas. All you need to do is sign as owner. Lucas stared at the paper, his name beside a canine's, a partnership. He hadn't signed anything official for over a year. The last signature was permission for spinal surgery that failed to restore his mobility. This signature was different. He signed. Lucas Hale, owner of Blizzard, K9, Race Exparis. Eleanor wiped, a tear as though casually brushing dust. Dr. Holt placed a warm hand on Lucas's shoulder. A dog like this doesn't just need a roof. He needs a person. Lucas replied quietly, Maybe I do too. Now that ownership was official, the dog finally received a name. One Lucas spoke aloud. He tested it, feeling its shape. Blizzard. The dog's ears twitched. His gaze sharpened. He accepted it. In a rare gesture, Sheriff Boone bent over, scratched Blizzard's ear, and said, Welcome to Silver Meadow, soldier. The rest of the visit was practical. Dr. Holt administered vitamins, checked for frostbite, there was none, and gave nutrition instructions. Blizzard accepted the treatment stoically, like a veteran enduring routine medical checks. As Lucas wheeled out to the ramp with Blizzard walking beside him, Boone stopped him. Lucas? The younger man looked up. I know you think you're broken, but look at him. Boone nodded at Blizzard. He's broken too, and still, he walked until he found someone. Lucas swallowed. Why me? Boone's eyes softened. Because you understand loss without letting it crush you completely, and because despite everything, you're still a protector at heart. Lucas didn't argue. Blizzard nudged his hand. Something inside Lucas, something frozen for over a year, shifted. Back at the cabin, Eleanor helped settle Blizzard into a warm spot. Lucas sat quietly near the fireplace, staring at the dog who now dozed contently. He whispered into the flickering light, "You lost your partner, and I lost my legs, but maybe we can walk again, even if not the way we walked before." The words rose like a prayer, not loud, not formal, just honest. And Blizzard, eyes half closed, wagged his tail once in agreement. Spring didn't arrive in Silver Meadow with sudden warmth. It came hesitantly, breathing soft hints of pine sap and faint moisture into the icy air, like a shy guest unsure if it was welcome. Snowbanks melted in slow, polite increments. Under the cabin windows, timid shoots of green pushed upward through thawing earth. Inside that quiet season of fragile renewal, Lucas Hale found himself changing as well, inch by inch, breath by breath. Blizzard had become his shadow. The pale shepherd was never more than a few feet away. His movements were graceful and disciplined, each step precise, each turn calculated. Blizzard's build was powerful, strong shoulders, dense winter fur, lean muscles beneath. Yet his personality remained humble, gentle with children, respectful to elders, alert to danger. He was a dog who worked with humans, not around them. A few days after Blizzard's adoption, Lucas decided to begin training again. Not Blizzard, Lucas trained himself. He had once directed teams, commanded squads, led rescues, but now he was rebuilding his own foundation. The first morning of training, he wheeled himself onto the small gravel yard behind the cabin. Blizzard followed, ears perked, tail low but steady. Lucas took a deep breath. "All right, boy, let's see if I remember how to hold a command." He cleared his throat, his voice firming into the old cadence of authority. "Sit." Blizzard sat instantly. "Stay." The dog froze like a carved sculpture. Lucas rolled a few feet away, then called, "Heel!" Blizzard rose and walked alongside the wheelchair, not ahead, not behind, perfectly aligned. Lucas felt a ripple of something electric through him, like muscle memory awakening not in his body, but in his soul. From the kitchen window, Eleanor watched her son with quiet awe. She didn't interrupt. Instead, she brewed tea and hummed a long-forgotten lullaby she used to sing when Lucas was a small boy, recovering from scraped elbows or failed spelling tests. Back then, it comforted him. Now, it comforted her. In the afternoons, Lucas would attempt exercises. He could not move his legs, but he could strengthen his arms, shoulders, and core. He would strap weights onto his wrists and push the wheels of the chair in longer loops, around the cabin, down the forest path, across small slopes. Blizzard trotted beside him with rhythmic patience, never rushing, always glancing sideways to ensure his human kept pace. Sometimes Lucas would stop mid-path to catch his breath. Blizzard would sit, silently keep watch, eyes scanning the trees, protective but calm. As days passed, Lucas's body responded. His arms thickened, veins becoming visible beneath the skin. His back straightened. His breathing grew deeper and fuller. These changes were small, invisible to a casual observer, but to Eleanor, they were miracles. One night, after one of these training sessions, Lucas sat at the fireplace, rubbing Blizzard's ears. The fire crackled softly. Eleanor knitted a scarf for the dog, white and gray to match Blizzard's coat. Lucas spoke quietly, almost to himself. "He's giving me structure again." Eleanor replied gently, "You're giving each other something." Lucas chuckled faintly. "He listens better than most recruits I trained." Eleanor looked at Blizzard's noble posture. "He's seen more of the world than we know, and lost more too." Lucas's face softened into empathy. "Yeah, he knows grief." For a moment neither spoke, only the fire popped and whispered. As word spread through town that Lucas had adopted a former K9, neighbors began appearing, cautious at first. They weren't visiting for Lucas, they were coming for Blizzard. Children wanted to pet him, adults wanted to meet him. Old men wanted to reminisce about dogs they had decades ago. Blizzard accepted them all with dignified politeness, yet something curious happened. Almost every visitor who came to see the dog ended up talking to Lucas, longer and with more warmth than they had in over a year. Blizzard acted as bridge. Where Lucas once felt like an island, Blizzard built a causeway back to the mainland. One afternoon, a retired mailman named Harlan Pike, short, pudgy, hair like white cotton, approached and shook Lucas's hand. He said, "We thought you were gone for good, son. We're glad to have you back." Lucas didn't quite know how to respond. He simply nodded. Harlan patted Blizzard. "And you, thank you for bringing him back." The dog wagged his tail once, solemnly, as though accepting the compliment like a medal. But Lucas's greatest change came not from public interaction, but from a small personal routine that gradually became ritual. Each morning, before speaking to anyone, he would place his hands on Blizzard's chest and simply feel the dog breathing, steady, grounded, alive. It anchored him, reminded him, "You are still here. You still exist in purpose. You are not done." He began talking to Blizzard more. These weren't commands, these were confessions. One dawn, as early light brushed the horizon, Lucas whispered, "I'm scared I'll never be who I was." Blizzard pressed against his side. Another evening, Lucas murmured, "I miss running, wind on my face, feet pounding dirt." Blizzard rested his head on Lucas's knee, as if telling him, "Then we'll run differently." Then there were the nightmares. Lucas would sometimes bolt awake at night, breathing fast, hands trembling, heart galloping. These were echoes of the explosion, of shrapnel and shock, of darker sounds that memory would not release. But Blizzard would be there, never barking or whining. He'd just lay a warm, heavy head on Lucas's thigh. And wait. And Lucas's breathing would slow. Eleanor witnessed one such moment from the hallway. She saw Blizzard do in silence what 1,000 comforting words could not. She whispered to herself, "He's saving my boy, every day." One afternoon, Lucas attempted something bold. He rolled to a wooden railing built for physical therapy, a sturdy beam anchored into the ground. He looked at it for a long moment. Eleanor, who was sweeping the porch, held her breath. Lucas locked the wheelchair wheels, gripped the railing, and tried to lift himself. His arms quivered, his shoulders strained, his teeth clenched. He managed to rise a few inches, then half stand, not truly standing, but pulling his torso upright. Blizzard didn't bark encouragement. He stood beside Lucas like a personal guard, ears forward, eyes fixed, tail still, a sentinel. Lucas gasped, sweat beaded. Then, he lowered himself slowly back into the chair. He didn't shout or rejoice. He simply closed his eyes. Eleanor approached, voice trembling. "Lucas, you haven't done that since rehab." Lucas stared at his hands, red, shaking, but alive. "I just needed something to stand for." His gaze drifted down to Blizzard. "And someone to stand with me." Days later, Lucas began guiding Blizzard through more advanced commands. Not because Blizzard needed training, but because Lucas needed purpose. They practiced search routines in the woods, retrieval signals, tracking scents that Eleanor planted. And with each exercise, Lucas became more animated. His voice sharpened. His confidence grew. He began greeting neighbors. He laughed, quietly but truly. Blizzard, once a soul wandering alone through storm, had become a living constant in Lucas's day. And bit by bit, soft as thawing snow, Silver Meadow saw Lucas Hale returning to life. Not the same Lucas. Not the deputy who chased criminals. Not the officer with flawless posture. A different Lucas. A Lucas built from endurance. A Lucas built from quiet courage. A Lucas rebuilt by a dog who refused to let him fade. February arrived wielding winter like a sword. The sky grew hard and dark. Wind tore through Silver Meadow's trees with sharp whistles, and snow no longer fell gently. It attacked sideways in furious gusts. Weather reporters called it the biggest storm in a decade. Residents called it a night to stay inside and pray. But for Lucas Hale and Blizzard, fate had other plans. It began with the emergency broadcast, static on the radio, followed by Sheriff Arlen Boone's voice, brittle and urgent. "Attention! This is a missing child alert. 7-year-old Nora Jacobs, last seen near her backyard, believed to have wandered into the woods." Lucas froze, his blood turning cold. Blizzard's ears snapped upward like radar dishes. Sheriff Boone continues, "Search teams are deploying, but visibility is minimal. Wind chill at -22. We need all experienced personnel available. Lucas didn't wait. He grabbed his heavy winter coat, already knowing where he was going. Blizzard trotted at his side, body taut, senses lit. Eleanor hurried over. Lucas, no, you can't. Lucas interrupted gently but firmly. A child is out there, Mom. I'm not staying inside. Blizzard nosed the door as if urging, Open it now! As Lucas wheeled out toward the storm van, the chaos of weather engulfed him. Snow lashed at his face, cutting breathing into bursts. Blizzard braced against the wind like a seasoned mountain dog, low stance, head forward, nostrils flaring. At the county command station, a converted firehouse, figures in reflective winter gear bustled in frantic motion. Sheriff Boone was at the center, issuing directives. His beard was rimed with frost, his eyebrows caked with ice. He saw Lucas approaching and strode toward him. Lucas, blizzard conditions, visibility's hell. We're losing people in whiteout every few minutes. Lucas glanced down at the shepherd beside him. Sheriff, you know as well as I do, he was born for this. Boone's eyes softened, recognizing truth. He nodded. All right. The sheriff knelt beside Blizzard, speaking low and firm. Nora Jacobs, 7 years old, pink wool coat, possible panic, possible hypothermia. Blizzard stared back with intense focus, absorbing every detail. Lucas pulled a scarf tighter around his neck. I'll run scent guidance with him. Boone gave a slow exhale. You sure you're ready for this? Lucas responded with a faint smile. I don't have to run. He runs for me. The search began. Lucas rode in the snow-equipped wheelchair, a rugged off-road model Blizzard had learned to walk beside with seamless synchronicity. Deputy Sarah Mitchell accompanied them. She was in her 30s, athletic, with auburn hair braided tightly, freckles across her nose, and a history of growing up on her family's Montana ranch. She was capable, calm under pressure, and fiercely protective of children, having lost her younger brother to a drowning accident when she was 12. Since then, she had made it her vow to never let another child die if she could prevent it. Sarah shouted over the wind, Blizzard picks up anything? Not yet. The dog's nose kept sweeping. The howl of winter was brutal, erasing tracks. Blizzard paused, stilled. Then, ears angled forward, head lifted, he caught something. A scent. Lucas felt it before seeing it. Blizzard's entire posture changed. Energy crackled through him like lightning. He barked once, sharp, directional. Lucas pointed. He's got her! And then Blizzard surged forward into white nothingness. Lucas pushed his wheels hard, arms burning, Sarah at his side, supporting him when gusts hit too fiercely. The storm roared like a living beast. Snow stung their eyes. Lucas had to blink rapidly to keep sight of Blizzard. But Blizzard never faltered. He moved with purpose, nose close to ground, digging through snow drifts deeper than his legs, barking every few seconds. Breadcrumbs of sound guiding his humans through blindness. Suddenly, Blizzard pivoted sharply left. He shoved his nose into a hollow between two rocky outcrops, almost buried in wind-packed snow, and barked violently, demanding attention. Sarah rushed forward, digging with bare-gloved hands. Lucas followed, heart hammering. There, beneath layers of snow, was a child, Nora Jacobs. She was small, 7 years old, pale-faced, with light brown hair matted with ice. She wore a pink wool coat, one mitten missing, lips pale as wax, body curled in fetal position, breathing shallow. The cold had claimed her quickly. Hypothermia had slowed everything. Lucas! Sarah shouted. She's alive, but fading fast. Training took over Lucas. He pulled off his coat, ignoring the stab of winter on his skin, and wrapped it around Nora's tiny body. Next, he pressed her into his chest, skin to skin against his inner warmth as survival protocol demanded. He murmured, voice trembling, "Stay with us, sweetheart. You're all right. We've got you." Blizzard curled around them, his large warm body shielding Lucas and Nora from the wind. The dog's fur became a living barrier. Snow beat against Blizzard's back, but he held firm, like a furry fortress. Sarah grabbed the radio. "We found her! Alive! Coordinates, North Ridge. Send medics now. Minutes dragged like lifetimes. Lucas kept holding Nora, sharing heat. He felt her breathing, weak, then slightly stronger. He whispered, "You're okay. Stay with us." At one point, Nora's eyelids fluttered, barely audible, her voice, "Doggy?" Lucas let out a shaky exhale, more emotion than relief. "Yes, that's Blizzard. He found you." The shepherd pressed his nose gently to her cheek, soft, protective. Sirens finally broke through the wind. Medical responders arrived, quickly transferring Nora into an insulated thermal wrap. The paramedic, a broad-shouldered Native American man named Daniel Two Rivers, did a fast assessment. "Pulse is low, but stable. She's a fighter. We're getting her out." He glanced at Blizzard. "And he's a hero." Lucas met his gaze. "We're all just following his lead." Back at the firehouse headquarters, warmth embraced them like a rescue blanket of its own. Sheriff Boone stood waiting, eyes intense. When he saw Nora alive, crying softly now in her father's arms, relief washed over his face in visible waves. People applauded, some cried, some touched Blizzard reverently, as though greeting a saint. Boone turned to Lucas. "You did good." Lucas shook his head. He did. Blizzard sat beside him, head high, posture perfect. Sheriff Boone crouched, locking eyes with the dog. "You brought a child home, Blizzard, and you brought a deputy back to life." Lucas blinked sharply, eyes burning, not from cold. That night, Lucas returned home exhausted. He laid in bed, muscles aching, body spent, but soul full. Blizzard curled beside him, warmth radiating through both. Lucas whispered to the shadows, "You found her, and I think you found me too." Blizzard rested his head on Lucas's unmoving legs. Lucas placed a hand on the dog's back. Outside, the storm still raged, but inside, their world was calm, quiet, and alive. Spring came fully to Silver Meadow, not in a gentle whisper this time, but like a choir returning to a long, silent church. Snow retreated, roads reappeared, birdsong returned to trees that had stood mute all winter. And within this transformation, Lucas Hale experienced his own thaw, as real as the land's. The day of the community ceremony arrived. The sky above the town hall was a flawless high country blue, as though the heavens themselves had swept away every cloud out of respect. People in coats and hats gathered, filling the square with hums of chatter, camera clicks, rustling programs. At the front, where a platform had been set up, Sheriff Arlen Boone stood waiting. Blizzard, leashed but calm, sat beside him, stern and noble, like a soldier awaiting invitation. Inside the building behind them, Lucas prepared. For the first time since the explosion over a year ago, he wasn't in his wheelchair. Not fully. Because now, after months of strengthening his arms, after nights of emotional battle, after days of training, he had been fitted with 2 prosthetic legs. Not beautiful ones, not sleek. They were practical. Steel and composite supports built for stability over aesthetics. They clamped to his thighs and calves like loyal braces. The process of learning to use them had been agonizing. Standing required balance. Every motion was a negotiation. Every step was both victory and reminder of cost. Eleanor Hale stood at the side, quiet and trembling. She wore a modest lilac sweater, her silver hair braided neatly. Her eyes shone, not with sadness now, but with pride swollen almost to bursting. Lucas stood in the side room, gripping parallel bars. Blizzard watched him with unwavering focus, understanding, encouraging. Lucas inhaled, breath slow. "I'm ready." Eleanor's voice shook. "Yes, my son. Yes, you are." When the side door opened and Lucas appeared, a hush rippled across the crowd like a wave. Conversations died, movements stilled. People rose to their feet without instruction. All eyes fixed on him, framed by bright daylight. Lucas Hale. A man once shattered, a man now walking. His step was imperfect, slow, mechanical, but unmistakably real. Each step was a declaration, a promise, a fight. Blizzard walked at his left, body taut with pride, matching speed. Lucas reached the podium. Sheriff Boone greeted him with a supportive hand on his shoulder, light but grounding, like a blessing. Boone began speaking, but had to pause, for it was clear emotion thickened even the sheriff's weathered voice. Folks of Silver Meadow, before you stands a man who refused to vanish, and a dog who refused to let him. In the darkest winter in a decade, these two brought our child home. Applause erupted, long, rolling, unstoppable. Eleanor pressed her hands to her lips, overwhelmed. Deputy Sarah Mitchell wiped her eyes, thinking of her brother lost years ago, and how Nora had not joined him, because Blizzard found her. Dr. Miriam Holt stood tall, nodding deeply. She had always believed in Blizzard's spirit. When the applause finally subsided, Sheriff Boone motioned for Lucas to speak. Lucas stood at the microphone, shaking slightly, but he steadied himself by placing a hand on Blizzard's head. Blizzard remained pressed against Lucas's leg, present, anchoring. Lucas spoke. His voice was soft at first, but strengthened as he continued. I used to think my life ended the day I lost my legs. I thought I had lost purpose, identity, even faith. I shut myself inside a winter of the soul. But I was wrong. A breeze swept through, gentle, almost reverent. Lucas continued. Purpose isn't always something you chase. Sometimes it finds you. In my case, it walked out of a snowstorm on 4 paws. Light laughter mixed with sniffles. Lucas's gaze drifted to Nora Jacobs in the front row, wrapped in a pink coat, smiling shyly. You were the first life Blizzard and I saved together, and you won't be the last. He straightened slightly, an act requiring visible exertion. Because Blizzard and I, we have a new mission. Boone nodded, stepping back to let Lucas reveal it. Lucas announced, we are starting a K-9-assisted recovery and resilience program, right here in Silver Meadow, for officers who've been injured in the line of duty, for veterans, for first responders who carry wounds no one can see. They will train with dogs, companions, partners, healers, just as Blizzard has done for me. A murmur of astonishment and admiration swept through the crowd. Lucas continued, pain isolates, but partnership reconnects. These dogs don't judge us for what we've lost. They simply stand with us as we learn to live differently. He reached down, stroking Blizzard's ear. I used to rescue people, but in the end, it was Blizzard who rescued me. Silence followed, but not empty silence. Heavy, sacred silence. Then, another tidal wave of applause, louder than before, longer. The town hall shook with it. Weeks passed. The program began. Lucas transformed part of his land into a training field. Grass grew wide and open. Wooden markers were set for scent trails, tunnels for crawling exercises, balance beams, retrieval tracks. Among the first participants was Officer Maria Ortega, a Latina officer in her 40s, compact and strong, who had survived a shooting that left her with nerve damage and severe PTSD. She had once been bright-spirited and playful, but trauma had made her brittle inside. She arrived skeptical, resistant, uncertain. Lucas recognized the signs. He didn't push her. He simply handed her a leash, attached to a young black and tan shepherd named Arrow. Maria's first words to the dog were whispered, almost reluctant, Hola, pequeño. Arrow leaned forward and licked her hand once. With that single gesture, her walls began to soften. Another participant, Officer Ted Kessler, once a sturdy, broad-chested patrolman who'd lost 3 fingers in a warehouse explosion. He suffered phantom pain, survivor's guilt, shame. Lucas paired him with a calm golden retriever named Clementine. The gentle dog would place her paw where his missing fingers once were, as if replacing absence with warmth. Ted often cried quietly during sessions, but never alone. Clem always stayed, and through all this, Blizzard served as model soldier. He demonstrated discipline, patience, cooperation. He would sit beside trainees, offering silent encouragement. Lucas sometimes joked that Blizzard spoke more profoundly without words than most humans did with them. Eleanor was there daily, helping with snacks, talking with families, offering comfort. She would often watch Lucas crossing the field on his prosthetics, with Blizzard at his left, both steadying each other. And she would smile, thinking, they saved each other. And now, they are saving others. One late afternoon, sunset painted the sky in orange strokes. Lucas stood resting against the fence after training. Blizzard sat beside him, panting softly. Lucas looked at the horizon. "Do you think this is why you came to me?" Blizzard didn't answer with sound. He simply pressed his body against Lucas's leg. Lucas chuckled softly. "Yeah, I think so too." A voice behind him. "You know, you could have quit, but you didn't." Lucas turned. Sheriff Boone approached slowly, hands tucked into his jacket. "Lucas," Boone said, "you're walking again, but even more importantly, you're leading again." Lucas exhaled. "I didn't do it alone." Boone gave a half smile. "None of us do." In the quiet closing of this story, we are reminded that the miracles of God do not always arrive with thunder or bright angels. Sometimes they come softly through the loyalty of a dog who refuses to leave a broken man, through the courage of a mother who never stops believing, and through the silent strength God places inside us, even when we feel we have nothing left. In our everyday lives, we all face winters of the heart, moments of fear, loneliness, or despair, but God walks beside us even then, guiding our steps, sending comfort in unexpected forms, and reminding us that our story is not finished. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who may need encouragement. Today, leave a comment to tell us your thoughts and type "Amen" if you believe in the quiet miracles God sends. And please remember to support the channel by pressing subscribe so we can continue bringing stories of faith, hope, and gentle redemption. May God bless you and your loved ones with peace, protection, and strength.